you can't see anything in a forest, does that mean there's nothing there? Ciao, I'm Ebony, an entomologist. Let's talk about it. So there's this very important but dwindling habitat along tropical and subtropical coastlines.
If you've ever been to like Florida, Belize, and even Madagascar, lucky you, you've definitely seen it before. It's known as the mangroves. And not mangroves, because people keep saying I say mangoes, not the fruit. They prove to be fruit, the tree. So mangroves are these mighty trees, and when you get many of them, they kind of interlock together and get into an entangled root system. And you're thinking, an entanglement, Ebony? Really? Yes, really, an entanglement. I said what I said. Now, what makes this entanglement so mighty and these trees and their ability is to thrive and flourish in saltwater conditions, which is a very highly rare quality for plants, and not a lot of them can do it. But these mangroves, that's what I said, I can do. But it's also their ability to suck the carbon out of the air through their root systems and be able to store it. And they're actually able to do this about 4 times more than other plants. So they're doing a lot, is what I'm saying. They're putting in the work. These trees also help to prevent and lessen erosions because of their interlocking maze system. If anything you start to learn about me, I really like mazes. So their interlocking of the maze roots and settlement. And it's also mighty against a lot of storms. So like hurricanes and big waves. I mean, in Florida, you gotta see them, and you better believe that the job that they're putting out there is definitely increasing. Climate change. And honestly, there's a bunch of more intricate and important stuff we can get into that they do and whatnot. And honestly, I can talk a lot more about it. And believe me, eventually I will. So stay tuned. Stay tuned for that. But for now, you're probably wondering, so why did you just tell me about all these essential things that mangroves do? What does this have to do with not seeing anything in the forest? You're sounding kind of sporadic with it. You're messing with me. And I'm going to say, no. I just like giving extra steps before we get there. So the reason I mention all of this is, when's the last time you went into a mangrove forest? Period. 1. And when you got in there, you saw an insect. And I'm not talking about mosquitoes. We see those all the time. And honestly, they're a great stable thing for the food chain. So leave them alone unless they start giving too much diseases. I'm talking about things like bees, butterflies, grasshoppers, different type of flies, hemipterans, aka true bugs, and all the other type of bugs. I'm talking about those. When's the last time you saw a bunch of those? Where are they and why can't I see them? So if we know typically a forest is regenerating or expanding, these insects, so the insect roles to help are like pollinators, to pollinate different plants and flowers so they can bloom and grow and spread. Probably nothing new you've heard, but also when all the animals and plants dies, what happens? Well, you get like decomposer insects that help break down the body or the plants, and they recycle that nutrition back into the ecosystem so it stays healthy, okay? And then think about this. I feel like a conspiracy theorist right now. Who keeps the population at bay and other competitors from being dominated? Predators. Okay, insect predators. Or herbivores. So those are our plant eaters. Thank you, vegans. You're doing hard work, okay? They keep the food chain going. So now, I don't know about you, but when I go to other forests around the world, I can usually spot insects out really easy when I look now. But in a mangrove forest, even with my insect googly eyes on, I cannot find them. Like, I don't know where they are. So who is doing these jobs? This is the question. So I started going down a rabbit hole to try to figure this out. I started looking into insects found in the mangroves, and I'm searching through papers and asking questions to a bunch of different organizations because someone has to have done this work, right? It can't be so brand new. I like to think I'm creative, but recreating the wheel is doing pretty well. And this is what I found so far. I found parasitoid wasps that keep the herbivory population at bay from over-consuming mangrove vegetation. I found weaver ants and leaf-eating beetles and ghost ants in Rookery Bay mangrove forest, which is on the southwest side of Florida, and it's like the largest undisturbed mangrove habitat in the North America, which, so lucky I get to be there, right? So these ghost ants actually protect the Miami blue butterfly caterpillar, which is an endangered species, and it protects them from other predators, and this actually helps the population grow. So thank you to these ants. And then other researchers also found termites breaking down dead wood and decaying organic matter. And there's just like a bunch of different like pollinators. So like bees and wasps and flies for like the black and white mangroves. Because I think did you know there's like 80 species of mangroves out there, right? And there's usually, I think, like 3 or 4 in Florida. But these black and white mangroves tend to sit higher up off the sea or ocean area, so they're a little bit more inland. And then even our favorite little fireflies are hunting other insects in the mangroves, so they're really going in on here. Now, what I did find interesting, or really I did, was snout moths. Also known as get with me. If you have trouble pronouncing words, I'm with you right there. You and me are on the same level, because Lord knows, Parilidae. Okay, so these larvae, they're basically just moths, but these larvae forms were found mangrove floors on the intertidal zone. So this is a fun area teeming with a lot of different lives, and it gets like flooded twice a day. It's crazy out there. And you may think, why and how are insects going down there? Like, what's going on? What are they doing? Me too. I thought the same thing. So, well, these moths were found to be feeding really on like 2 algae down there growing on the ground. And then 2 of the snout species shelter themselves actually in the rotting leaves. And then they pupate in the rotting leaves also. So it's not just like a shelter, it's like they really need these leaves for their life cycle. So these are really just like, it's crazy. Like, this is just like in the short span of the research that I've been finding. So those are just like a handful of what some folks are observing and then reporting back to the literature about these insects being found in the mangroves. But in the context of like bigger picture and the amount of insects that exist out there, is that really a lot? I mean, really, like, really. But is that all that exists? No. And that's the beauty of it. In 2021, Yale and their team published a study that I feel brought hope to the insect mangrove forest crisis and created a new light on mangroves and their unseen heroes. The paper is called Mangroves, an Overlooked Hotspot of Insects Despite Low Plant Diversity. Facts. So this team looked at mangrove forests and 5 other types of forests, such as like swamps and urban edges. And they found that mangrove forests actually like harbored the highest levels of insect species and ecological guild diversity. So these are like the pollinator functions, the decomposer functions, like those things that we talked about earlier in all these different groups. But they just simply like put out a malaise trap and then did some DNA barcoding and everything that they captured, and they pretty much like were saying like, hey, we just found all these insects, and guess what? We found 3,000 species. Wow. I think over 3,000 species of insects. And then 50% of those 3,000 species, over 50% I should say, are specifically mangrove species, like related insects. Are you kidding me? So that's over 1,500 species. Like, I literally can't even visualize what that lives like. But I'm also really bad at conceptualizing size, amount, or weight. So it is what it is. Anyway, so we have this many insect species, not even to account for individuals per group. but just like walking around, flying, living in these forests of these mangrove habitats, and they weren't easily spotted. You're telling me all these things, all these individuals just weren't easily found right off the bat? Why is that? Well, I suspect these insects that are being found are excellent camouflage. That means they can hide really, really well. They're like the best at hide and go seek, and they will outdo us all. So, mangrove bark and roots is usually an earthy, muted tone, and the leaves are like dark green to like pale green. So, for me, those are not like standout, pop out colors, not like a fuchsia, easily find it type of things. And my eyes won't easily catch that right away if they're like in camouflage mode. Another thing is I suspect that this habitat is constantly being washed over by fluctuating tides and storms and open winds coming off from like the ocean. Like, remember I told you, like, they're going through a lot. Like the mangroves habitats, a lot is always happening on the daily basis. So maybe these insects are like deeply hiding themselves in the roots or bark, which I think from one of the papers I read, one of the beetles are actually doing that. Or even like decaying leaf matter, like you remember the earlier moth caterpillars, well, moth larvae, to shelter themselves. And last, I think it's just because they're really tiny. Like, this is just more like anecdotal from like me being out there and looking for the ones that I could find. They're just really tiny. But I think this is what it is. So, like, why do I even care about all this? Well, if you know me, like, I grew up in South Florida. Woo, woo, woo. And I know we have a lot of things going on with Florida that could be improved. Well, one thing I think Florida does really right is its wildlife and conservation and like loving nature and protection. I really rock hard with nature. I grew up like going to the beach all the time. I went to like an Everglades restoration program. So like truly getting like familiarized with these different type of habitats is in my niche and my specialty. But also I just feel like it's like home, like being out there and seeing what's in the mangroves and what I can find and whatnot. It's a different type of, I don't know, special little spot in my heart. And I don't want to see my home go away, even though I'm told we will be washed away and flooded in 30 years. Rebuke that in the name of Jesus. Amen. Let's get it right, guys. Let's go ahead and fix climate change. So I really like it. And I also really love insects and always have since the age of 3. Let's put these two things together and let's figure out what's happening. So, we think about these things, but it's also like most of these studies that I have been looking at, they're like from Southeast Asia and India and China and Mexico and Nigeria and like parts of the US. Like, I think it's like that part that transitions from like Mexico into the United States. But I want to say like Louisiana, but that may be more the swamp intrusion papers I read about, so I'm not really sure about that last place. Don't quote me on nothing. Okay, don't be quoting on me. If anything, go and do your own research from all the stuff I literally just told you. I will do my best and put as much of the sources as I can in the description section, so you can have that. Go wild. All right? And like also bravo to these countries for putting all this work in and being the first to lead in the mangrove insect finds and whatnot. Like truly, you guys are trailblazers out here. But when it comes to Florida, from me asking around to a bunch of different organizations, institutes, and people, and reading in the literature, Florida is lacking in this area, despite mangrove forests contributing to like a literally billion-dollar industry in Florida due to its carbon sequestration ability, fishery support and recreational fishing that mangroves provide, and storm and flood protection. Ooh, that last one's a big one. And then put on top of the foundation in ecological services that insects literally are in nature and growing and flourishing, or really helping an ecosystem to flourish. Put these two things together and this area becomes niche and is massively understudied and untapped. So I decided I would tap that. Ciao.